The main thrust of PopCross Studios is taking pop culture characters and franchises and redesigning them and rewriting their stories to fit them into other universes or turn them into other things. But in order to do that, I kinda need to know a decent amount about the franchise or character going into a video, because I only have 2.5 days to make every video on this channel. Which can mean I tend to repeat franchises that I really like or already know enough about. So to try and shake things up a little bit, a month ago I asked my subscribers to submit their own pop culture crossovers or fusions or whatever, using characters or franchises that I never or very rarely work with. So for today's episode, along with showing off a whole bunch of the awesome stuff that was sent in, I'm going to take 6 of my favorite submissions and redraw them in my art style while reading out the lore or stories that were submitted with them. Figured this would be a good way to shake up the kind of stuff that I work with on the channel. Definitely excited to give you all something a little bit different with this episode, and I hope you all like the stories that were submitted by the community. Let's jump right in, shall we? Let's go. Hit like if you want, subscribe if you feel like, but either way, enjoy the show. First up, we have a tale of Sora from Kingdom Hearts if he was in Dungeons & Dragons, designed and written by Oop, who, by the way, sorry I couldn't do all the crazy accents in your Discord name, I couldn't find a font that had them all. But anyway, into the story. In ancient times, people believed that light was a gift from a god by the name of Regal. She was dearly beloved by her followers, they craved her light more than anything else in the world. But Regal was safeguarded by her counterpart, Destadi, the god of darkness. Warriors vied for that precious light, thus beginning the War of Dominion. What those warriors didn't realize, however, was that light can't live without darkness. The violent clash shattered the connection between both gods, separating their souls into 20 pieces, 7 of light and 13 of darkness. With Regal and Destadi scattered to the winds, the bonds between the local nations broke all contact with each other, blaming one another for the fall of the gods. What they did not realize, however, was that those pieces of light and darkness spread vast in the kingdoms, deciding to rest in the hearts of the princes and princesses of these distant lands. Forever to be separated unless all pieces of the heart came together, bringing both Regal and Destadi back from the metaphorical grave. Hundreds of years would pass, leading to the legend of Kingdom Hearts, to be only seen as a myth. The War of Dominion would be a tale passed from generation to generation. The battle with weapons of light and darkness inspired many brave warriors to take up arms for their kingdom. One of these people would be a boy from a distant island kingdom. His name was Sora. Stories of knightship and magic intrigued Sora to no end. He waited with anticipation for when he could apply to the knight school when he turned 16. For now, however, he'd have to settle for wooden sword fights on the beach and commonplace magic texts. He envied his best friend Riku, who had already been accepted to the academy, but Sora could wait one more year. Then, he'd finally be able to live out his dream. He also had another friend, Princess Kairi of Destina. They were all childhood friends. Destina was small and rural enough that the royalty were seen as mutuals, more so than rulers of their society. When she could, Kairi would show Sora the magic texts that she would borrow from her father's study. They would both rave at the high-level spells, hoping one day they'd both be able to either perform them or at least see them in person. The trio of Sora, Riku, and Kairi were inseparable. Sadly, however, fate had other plans for these young souls. One evening, the island kingdom was ransacked by an army of shadows and drow. Sora watched as both his friends were captured by the darkness, leaving nothing in its wake. Just before he too was to fall to shadows, a bright light bellowed from his chest. For a split moment, he heard a voice call to him. "Power sleeps within you. If you give it form, it will give you strength. There will be times you'll have to fight to keep your light burning strong. Remember, however, the closer you get to light, the greater your shadow becomes. Yet you must persevere. You hold the mightiest weapon of all. You will be the one who opens the door. May your heart be your guiding key." As Sora's vision cleared, he noticed the shadows were gone, clasping in his hands a silver and gold axe of light. Sora knew right then and there that he was called to do something, though what, he had no clue. After dealing with the remaining shadows and drow in Destina, he set off to the closest town over, Traverse. He felt his heart being drawn to the place. He hoped deep down that it was a sign that maybe, just maybe, he'd find his friends there. Next, we have Generator Rex as a transformer, designed and written by Brenwells12. Van Cleese and his team of scientists had found a crashed spaceship in 1985. Inside was a small squadron of robots which had died during the crash. But along with them was also a device, later found out to be the Allspark. These scientists took the Allspark to experiment on. The incredible device contained an energy called Energon, a sort of interterrestrial fuel like nothing they'd ever seen. Many years later, a massive explosion released a high concentration of nanites infused with this Energon into the atmosphere. They infected almost every living and technology-based thing on Earth. Now, these nanites may randomly activate. If its host is living, it turns them into a part machine-based monstrosity. If it's tech-based, they become a mindless, transforming robot. These are known as ARCs, augmented reactive causality. People who become ARCs lose all sense and go on mindless rampages. The government created a new subdivision known as Providence to deal with these ARCs. Rex is an artificial ARC infused with nanites and Energon. He was created by Providence. He can use his nanites to create weapons like swords and giant fists, but he can also use them to transform into vehicles. He has the unique ability to cure ARCs by absorbing their nanites. For the past 5 years, he has been working with Providence to contain and cure ARCs. Van Cleese, now infused with nanites himself, wants to control them all and destroy Providence so he can turn the world itself into an ARC. And Rex is the key to his plan. Now, I was super excited to see this submission because I've never actually watched Generator Rex. I want to, but it's just not on any streaming service I have in Canada. But I really liked the design. It was simple, but also cool. Obviously, the idea worked really well. And for my version of the drawing, I just added a few little extra details to try and make it look a little bit more me, while obviously trying to stick as much as I could to the original design as well. This one was surprisingly time-consuming. I mean, I know anytime I draw Transformers stuff, I always whine a little bit about how long Transformers take to draw, but I figured since it was a simpler design, it wouldn't be so time-consuming, but it still took me a decently long time to do this one. But totally worth it. I really like how it turned out, and was excited to work with that original submission. Here's the finished result. Next up, we've got Jar Binks as a dragon, designed and written by many time submitter Christopher Chomacos. And the lore was actually written from the perspective of Astra, everyone's favorite Multiverse Tales overseer. Here goes. Day 1. Okay, when I borrowed this dragon from Ulysses, I never really knew if it would be weak or powerful. It just seemed to clumsily help out other dragons and be mostly a burden. But when I finally did get my hands on it, my entire perspective changed. When it's not around other dragons, it shows its true colors. It did not like being teleported across the Everyverse, so it just started wreaking havoc. It spat this purple-colored lightning to destroy everything in sight. Day 60. After studying many dragons in this species, I realized a lot of stuff. I noticed they're all kind of different from each other. Some are warriors for what seemed like a much bigger leader. But the first one I looked at seemed to have particular personalities and features. You see, this one can talk occasionally, and it's honestly super annoying, but I'm kinda used to it at this point. Moving aside from that, it seems to have some hard casing around its ribcage. It's not like a shell because it doesn't connect to a skeleton. It also doesn't have a carapace, the top part of a shell, or a plastron, the bottom part of a shell. Yeah, that's right, I know big words, I've been around. Day 725. In my last days of research, I managed to find some more creatures like this grubby, moist little beast. It seems like the list could go on and on and on, but that will require a lot more research, and I've wasted way too much time on this guy already. I could find 3 relatives, one in massive quantities called Gungans of Naboo. They seem to be the closest thing I could find to this dragon. The second almost managed to actually hunt me down, and I think it's called the Yuwacha Gungan or something. They are super skilled hunters, and they have some kind of speech like the Gunganus Giganticus, except they talk prettier. The final one is actually one of a kind. It's supposedly a human with so many defects that it looks like a Gungan. The locals call him Jar Binks. But you know what, I'm done with this thing for now. I've got better things to do than just spend all day looking at some watery, flappy-tongued freak. Now for this episode, I was mostly trying to take characters from franchises that I don't work with very much, but this one I figured was a good exception. I do stuff in the Star Wars universe, but I haven't done anything with Jar Binks, and I didn't have any immediate plans to do anything with Jar Binks. Plus, Christopher has submitted a few really cool Jar designs, and I'm glad that I could finally actually take one for an episode and use it. Hope you all like the finished result. Here it is. This month, more so than ever, it was super hard for me to decide on who I was using for this, because there were so many factors to take into effect. This was, I think, the first time I've made lore a requirement, and I didn't get to read through every single bit of lore because there were hundreds and hundreds of submissions, and that itself would have taken me like 5 days, and I only have 2.5 days to make these videos, so I was deciding largely based off the designs, and then reading through the lore to make some of my final decisions on the ones that I'd narrowed down to the heavy contenders. But going through all the submissions gave me some really good ideas for other franchises I should pull from, because there were submissions from people who were using franchises that I knew decently well but had just never used on the channel, and then there were some submissions that just made me go, wow, this is really interesting, what is this from? And then I would look into what it was from, and that would just make me want to work with that franchise, or watch the show, read the book or comic or whatever it was from. It was so cool seeing all the submissions and getting a reminder of how many awesome pop culture franchises there are out there, and how many that I know very little about. I tend to think of myself as having a decently well-rounded knowledge of pop culture, but there's obviously still tons of stuff that I've just never really dipped into that could really provide some awesome creative fuel for this channel. Anyway, this was just a bit of a mid-video break to show off a whole bunch of the awesome submissions. I'm gonna show a whole bunch more at the end of the video, and I showed some at the beginning. But for now, let's get back into a few more of the awesome redraws. Next up, we have a story and design by SLSO3, and this is the world of Carmen San Diego mixed with Trollhunters. Here goes. Carmen San Diego doesn't know much about her past. She was found and raised by the troll faculty of the Vile Order, and as such, she became one of their greatest students. At Vile Academy, they taught one thing: stealing. Every troll at Vile was a changeling, a troll that can magically take the form of a human at will. Changelings take the form of humans whom they replace, aka their familiar. Carmen was on her way to graduation when the faculty deliberately failed her. But that wouldn't stop her. When the rest of her class was given their first mission as Vile operatives, she snuck out to go with them. Since Troll's skin burns in the sunlight, she had never been allowed to leave HQ, despite being a changeling, able to take human form and thus not burn. However, when she followed her former classmates, she witnessed something she would never forget. She saw her friends kill another troll. She witnessed him turn to stone, and she saw her friends grab a small glowing amulet off his remains. But suddenly, the amulet levitated out of their hands and zipped straight towards Carmen. Levitating before her, it spoke. Carmen San Diego. But Carmen had no chance to respond. She was found and she was taken back to Vile. But she had tasted freedom. She had seen the sky and the world outside Vile, and she had seen Vile for what it truly was: evil. She passed the next few months planning her escape, under the guise of studying for her classes, until the opportunity finally came. Sometime that year, the annual visit of the Vile's bookkeeper came around, and it was time to carry out her escape. Carmen acted like a technician and caught a ride in the elevator. She was let into the main storage room, and there, she grabbed the amulet, snuck onto the gyrosphere, and ran away, for good this time. She was on the run when she was found by Blinkus Blinky Galadrigal and her ally, known as Arg. They taught her the 3 rules of troll hunting: always be afraid, always finish the fight, and when in doubt, kick them in the gronknucks. Carmen learned how to summon armor from her amulet with the incantation, "For the glory of Merlin, daylight is mine to command." However, eventually Carmen was found out to be a changeling by her allies. This was evil magic among good trolls. They tentatively allowed Carmen to continue using it as long as Vile was at large, She used it for good, and as long as she had no other way of saving familiars from the Dark Realm. After a year, the group had fought many vile operatives on countless missions. Carmen had learned how to cut stones to enhance her armor, and she had even unlocked the Starlight armor. The armor was enhanced with the 3 Vile relics she had stolen from Vile on her missions. One gave her a grappling hook, the other a glider for quick air escapes, and the third completed the new armor's look, changing it entirely. The new incantation for it was, "For the ruin of Vile, Starlight is mine to command." Now, each night she steals from Vile, defends good and innocent trolls and humans alike, and someday she will finally give Vile what they deserve. Next up, we have Friendly Neighborhood Palm Dude's story and design of the main character from the video game Don't Starve as a League of Legends champion. Here goes. Wilson P. Higgsbury is a failed scientist that tries his best with his inventions, but never quite succeeds. One day he was thinking in his dusty old attic when he heard a voice coming from his radio. "Say pal, looks like you're having some trouble. I have some secret knowledge to share with you if you think you're ready for it." The scientist smiled, then said, "Yes." Suddenly, in an instant, he knew what he needed to do. He shut off the radio. "No, wait, there's something else that I want!" And he got to work. He built a machine, and when he was finished, he entered it and was transported to the Shadow Realm, underneath what summoners call Runeterra. He somehow escaped the Shadow Realm, but he emerged from there completely changed. He had lost his mind, and parts of his body were corrupted by shadows. He now had a claw-like hand that could slash through enemies' flesh. But he did still have his genius, despite his mind being partially gone. He crafted some shadows into nightmare fuel that could be used against enemies, and he captured 2 shadow creatures to bring with him. One was a rabbit-like creature that could attack enemies for him, and the other was a nightmare, similar to what one of the summoners refer to as Nocturne, but less powerful. Wilson could use it to become a shadow version of himself for a limited period of time. He would become bigger and stronger and could shape his limbs into weapons. This is the tale of Wilson P. Higgsbury, the Dark Scientist, champion of the Summoner's Rift. Now, I was really excited to work with something League of Legends related. In terms of Don't Starve, I've seen images from the game, but I've never played it before. But even League of Legends, I've only played a little bit because I'm just so terrible at it. But I do love the designs. I recently bought the Art of League of Legends book, and in the background, you probably can't really see it because it's really small. I now have a statue of Vi back there because I think Vi from League of Legends is just one of the coolest video game character designs. Of course, I am pretty biased though because I just love any character with giant fists. But yeah, I do want to do some more stuff with League of Legends on this channel, but at this point I've done almost nothing besides redrawing this character and once way back drawing Vi as a cartoon character in a cartoon kind of episode. But anyway, I really liked redrawing this one. I hope everybody else likes the result. Here's Friendly Neighborhood Palm Dude submission. Finally, we have Brotquell's submission of SCP-682 as a Transformer. Here goes. Many bots thought of Shockwave as nothing but an emotionless monster, dedicated only to science, and that's mostly true. But no matter what, Shockwave seeks the survival and superiority of Cybertron and its society. As he walks through the corridors of his secret containment base, hidden deep in the Rust Sea, he counts the cells containing anomalies in one way or another too dangerous or inconceivable to be left to roam free. He stops in front of the most frustrating case he has ever met. Subject 682. From now on only referred to as 682. It's a creature also known as the Immortal Terracon. 682 was once a beast former from the colony world of Eucharis, captured by the fanatic nihilist named Bludgeon, and crudely experimented on by the tainted energon flowing within Triptychon's body. The results were terrifying. Turned into a techno-organic, crocodilian monstrosity, 682's strength and intellect were greatly enhanced, along with regenerative capacities and maybe aggressiveness. The maybe part is because it's still unclear if the immense aggressiveness and hatred towards life as a whole is due to the mutation or the endless torture that Bludgeon made him go through. Not that Shockwave was much better. By now, Shockwave has tried hundreds of different ways to terminate 682 and all proved unsuccessful. Cosmic Rust? 682 develops immunity, and after losing 62.8% of its body, it starts regenerating. Scraplets? The metal composing 682's body becomes toxic. Spark Eaters? 682's spark reverts its polarity, draining the Spark Eaters, and those were only some of the most spectacular tries. Fire, acid, cold, nothing sticks, not even other anomalies. Shockwave's frustration is reaching a new peak, and he's considering trying to introduce 682 to the Dinobots, but he was afraid of the brutes actually befriending 682 and joining him on a revenge campaign against Shockwave. No, that is too much of a risk. Shockwave must live on to ensure the survival of Cybertronian kind. He will secure those anomalies, he will contain them, and he will protect his world. After all, it's the only logical thing to do. Now this one is probably going to be one of the headliners of the video up on the thumbnail because I really love the result, and I love the original submission. I know very little about SCPs, but I have become super curious from people talking about them in the comments. I did a little bit of research, but I still don't feel like I could properly explain it to anyone that doesn't know what the SCP Foundation is, so if you're listening to this and going, what the heck is SCP, just give it a little Google, because it's pretty interesting, and there's definitely some awesome creative fuel there. I do hope to do an episode on it eventually, but I need to think of an interesting way to frame it. Anyway, thank you so much for the submission. I hope everyone likes the final result. Here it is. And there we have the background for the next month of PopCross Studios videos. But of course, it's still time to show off a whole bunch of the other stuff that was submitted, because I really want to make sure I show as many submissions as possible. I'm definitely considering doing this same challenge again for a future PopCross Community redraw episode, because first of all, it makes it a little bit easier for me if I don't have to write a full fleshed out story for these episodes myself and can just pull from stories that were submitted. But as I said, it's really cool working with franchises that I never thought about working with or haven't worked with, or characters from franchises that I haven't worked with. I think it is helping to freshen up the channel a little bit more, and I am trying to branch out a bit more myself. Like I recently did the Greek gods and demigods episode. I hadn't worked with them on the channel before, and that was a lot of fun. And I plan on doing some episodes focused around more famous things as other things, like when I did the famous vehicles as Transformers episode. That worked pretty well. I want to try something like famous book characters as superheroes or something like that, because in that episode I could work with like Harry Potter and Katniss Everdeen, maybe someone from Maze Runners or Percy Jackson, and I want to do a famous movie characters episode of something as well, so I could work with like Indiana Jones or the Terminator or something like that. And of course there's always so many other animes that I could branch into. Right now I'm watching Cells at Work. I don't know if there's anything from that I could work into an episode, but who knows, maybe. Anyway, this is kind of just me rambling a little bit because I want to make sure I have enough time to show off as many submissions as possible. When I made the full submission scroll, it was about 3.5 minutes, so hopefully I've done enough rambling to show most of the submissions. But at this point, I think I should start wrapping up the episode. But, you know, first, of course, I have to talk about next month's submission topic. What I want to do is another episode kind of like what I did with the Beast Chronicler. So I want to do a Multiverse Tales style story-focused episode in the world of my kaiju videos. That universe having started with the Ben 10 aliens as kaiju. So linked in the description and probably the pinned comment or something of this video, there is a Google Docs document where you can go look at the 5 brief descriptions of the different kaiju, and then you take one of those and design what you think they should look like. Only one submission per person, please. It's been a while since I said that in a video, and I've started noticing lots of people are submitting multiple characters. Please just submit one design. Of the submissions, I will pick my favorite design for each of the 5 creatures and redraw them in the next community-focused episode. Super excited to see what people submit, but for now, that's all for today. I'm Christian Pearson, this has been PopCross Studios, home of the nerdiest art videos on YouTube. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I will see you all in the next episode on Friday. Goodbye.